the lockdown days. So we've learned a lot today during the lockdown, especially Sujata has become the technical expert on the whole thing. But this is our very first hybrid meeting, and I thank you for your patience and your appearance today. Thank you so much.
No problem. Pleasure to be with all of you.
Thank you. So I'll be addressing the members for a minute. I'm just going to welcome them. Ladies, pardon me, you have to see my backside. Thank you. Just to welcome all our very, very beautiful, dear, precious Duchess members back to the meeting. I can't tell you how good it feels. It feels just fantastic. I must tell you that, we at the Duchess Club, all of us have tried to keep you all as occupied as possible. And we did our best. And I guess it took us this much of time to get back to a hybrid meeting. But we are good to go from now onwards. So we'll be seeing you all every month on month. Of course, we're going to maintain our safety norms with the mask and social distancing and etc. Because I think, the last period has given us enough to think about and ponder about. So we are good to go. And I'm so glad to welcome all of you back. The last period has been very, very trying for all of us. I'm sorry to say that some of us have lost some loved ones, and just a silent prayer to all of them that their souls should rest in peace. Just that, at the end of it, there's only one feeling that is left with us, and that is of humility and gratitude. Those are the feelings that I have learned from the COVID period, and grateful that I'm still breathing and I'm alive, and there's so much more that we can do when we are breathing, right? So welcome back, ladies, and just to say thank you for being with us, and thank you for all the support you have given us all these months. Thank you so much. Again, grateful for someone like Neerja Birla to come in as our very first resource for a meeting like this, and very happy that Sujata has been able to connect with her, and really happy Neerja is here with us.
Absolutely a pleasure, actually. I'm really happy to be here too. Sujata Bhavi is very dear to me, so there was no way that I would have said no to her. So it's
looking at your accomplishments, Neerja, I think it's like it can run into many pages, okay? So I'm just going to give a little brief about a little profile of yours will be announced now. And of course, Sujata is going to take us into the whole journey of yours, and all of us sitting here are ready to listen to you. Mrs. Neerja Birla, a passionate educationist and a mental health champion. Mrs. Neerja is the founder and chairperson of the Aditya Birla Education Trust, ABET. ABET endeavors to positively impact the lives of people from all sections of society and bring about progressive change, whether it is in the field of education or on the mental health landscape of India. Mrs. Birla passionately believes that those suffering from mental health issues must be empowered so that they may lead dignified and meaningful lives in society without any discrimination, which was the genesis of Empower. Her efforts as a mental health activist have truly brought about a paradigm shift in India's attitude towards mental health after decades of stigmatization. So kudos to you. Under her dynamic leadership as an educationist, the Aditya Birla World Academy, an international school with an Indian soul, has been ranked the second best international school in all of India in the education world. In the Education World India School Rankings 2021. It promotes the holistic development of its students over and above just their academic ones. Most importantly, the emotional and mental well-being of students take priority above all else at ABWA. Very dear to Mrs. Birla's heart is the Aditya Birla Integrated School, which was ranked the first in the special needs school in the country by Education World India for 2021. Oh my God, isn't that? The School provides groundbreaking inclusive education of children with different learning or emotional needs. It believes in inspiring potential within each individual. Mrs. Birla also believes that it is imperative that our educators evolve with changing times. The Aditya Birla Education Academy is a sincere attempt to empower our teachers. Teachers hold the key to unlocking the potential in children. ABEA endeavors to unlock the potential in the teachers. Ms. Nirja Birla is also the worthy recipient of a multitude of Indian and international awards, which include uh, Today, uh, the Business Today Most Powerful Women in Business Award, which is the 2020 award, and 20 Top Global Mental Health Leaders Award by the World Mental Health Congress 2019, and the Global Impact Leader of the Year Award at the UK-based Private Health Institute's Global Annual Summit 2018. Oh my God. An inspiring personality, she's a progressive, dynamic, and versatile woman, driven by her passions and an unwavering resolve to give back to society with a sense of responsibility. On a more personal note, she holds a bachelor's honors degree in psychology from the University of Derby, is married to Mr. Kumar Mangalam Birla, and is the proud mother of three beautiful children, Ananashri, Aryaman Vikram, and Advaitesha. She is also a committed fitness and outdoor sports enthusiast. I love this aspect of you. Loves reading and listening to music and is extremely fond of traveling and trekking and cycling. A firm believer in the Japanese concept of wabi sabi, she thrives in the transient beauty of imperfection, impermanence, and being incomplete. She aspires to be sthit pragya, being balanced and equanimous in an ongoing endeavor towards self-awareness and self-control. Welcome to you, Nirja. So happy that you're again with us. Thank you so much. Sujata.
Sorry.
You have to unmute her.
Welcome, Mrs. Nirja Birla, to our Duchess Club. As Nina has already explained and said that you are a multifaceted personality, extremely talented person, a super wife, super mom, an epitome of effortless grit, quiet strength. Yes, you do strive for excellence and you are an inspiration for many. I'm very pleased and highly obliged having you at the Duchess Club. And thank you for taking out time to be here with us today. Anija, you have to unmute yourself, Nija.
Yeah. So I was sorry, I was not being able to do it earlier. I think the host wasn't enabling. But thank you so much, Sujata Bhabhi, for inviting me here. I'm really happy to be here, and especially since it's the first time that you're meeting at the Duchess Club for the meeting. So it makes it even more special. And like I said earlier, there was no way I would have ever said no to you. So um, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak to so many.
Thank you so much. And now we can go ahead. Nija, I just wanted to know, how were your growing up years in the S. Kumar family?
So, growing up back then, I think like for all of us was so much more simplistic actually, so just regular routine school life and simple friends. We lived in a building, so going down to play every evening. Of course, there was a time limit. You had to be up by 7:30 because it was dinner time. So it was a very simplistic life. And I think, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Also, the summer holidays were so much simpler. Just went to, your nanny's house for all your vacations, just played with cousins. So it was a very sort of a much simplistic, very easygoing, carefree kind of life. And I think that probably holds true for a lot of us.
Absolutely. I think it holds true for all of us playing down in our building and making friends in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
which is so unseen today.
Yeah, absolutely. Going down and playing in the building is unheard of, now.
So you were married very young at the age of 18, which means that you and your husband, Mr. Kumar Mangalam, have literally grown up together. Could you please tell us what it was like and about your early years of marriage?
So yeah, I got married at 18 and shockingly so actually I got engaged at 16. So that was like really young. Um, so when we got married, we were obviously very young and very raw, quite immature. So obviously there were, it comes with its own set of challenges. And any case, again, back then life was so different, and things were done very differently. There was a lot more protocol, a lot of things that could be done, could not be done, and all of that. So and I was very young, so it was very challenging, there's no doubt about it. But I think what really helped is because I was so young, and there were no preconceived notions, there were no set schemas in my mind. That just made it that much easier, because you could sort of flow with the whole situation, and you could mold yourself into various roles, and that made it that much easier actually. Of course, I mean, now when you look back on hindsight, I don't think I would have had it any other way. But back then, yes, definitely it had its set of challenges, and I think that's part and parcel of everyone's life, really. Everyone has to go through those ups and downs, and adjustment issues and all of that.
Yes, but because we had got married earlier, as you said, we didn't have any preconceived ideas and ways of dealing with life. And so we just molded as to whatever the circumstances were.
Perspective, exactly. And I think back then we kind of took whatever situation was there and made the best of it. I don't think that we ever thought any other way. I don't think our minds or our upbringing or circumstances or situations or life let us think that can it be any other. We just dealt a pack of cards, and we just learned to play the best hand that we could.
Absolutely. So, how did your grand in laws, Mr. and Mrs. B.K. Birla, influence you?
Greatly, greatly. I think they have had a major impact, influence in my life. I think them and my late father-in-law, and of course my parents, are the ones who really influenced my thinking a lot. My grandparents-in-law were extremely loving, very doting, um, and they just uh, again, they was very down to earth, and I think humility is something that everybody knows of them. But even as people, they were very down to earth, and uh, and very approachable. So uh, I used to call my grandmother-in-law Ma. So Ma and I could talk about just about anything under the sun. So for somebody else, obviously she came across as this very strict disciplinarian, matriarchal figure, which she was. But there was a very, very, very warm side to her, and a very endearing side to her. And I think I was very fortunate that I got the love and blessings of both of them. Very inspiring people, and very disciplined, but extremely balanced. And I think that is something that we all at home really take a lot from them, is that how do you do everything and yet lead such a balanced life? And you're able to connect with people, you're obviously able to do your work, you're able to follow your hobbies. Ma, till the age of 85, in fact till about 90, she was learning French. So it so there was a lot that one could really learn, that one has learned from them.
I know she's been so inspirational to many.
Yeah.
And how do you juggle being a mother of three children of varied ages with varied interests?
So just to put it in a sentence, never a dull moment. There's never a dull moment in my life thanks to them. It's a lot of fun. I mean, I thrive, I think, in that. Um, so I really enjoy it. And of course, I mean, like you said, because they're of varied interests, there's always something or the other happening with one of them or with all of them. Yeah, so it's fun. But I guess I think that's what adds to the spunk of life. I don't think I would have had it any other way.
And you being such a liberal parents, both of you have been such liberal parents. It's something to admire again.
Yeah, well, sometimes one thinks that your kids. I mean, obviously, I mean, we wouldn't have had it any other manner, but because they are independent minded, sometimes I wonder that I just sometimes think out of frustration that do you always have to argue about everything? I mean, can you just not take sometimes some things that I'm just saying? No, but that's never the case. So everything is always debated, and it's a very democratic kind of a system.
Upbringing for them. Yes, absolutely. So, how challenging can parenting be? And we would love to know your tips for good parenting. I know you have spoken at different forums for parenting.
Yeah. So I think I think for all of us, I think we've all, I mean, all of us have turned out right, and I think obviously now things are a little different. So we kind of beat ourselves up to be the perfect parent. But I think one thing that I have learned, and I'm still learning along the way, is that there is no such thing as perfect parenting, and there is no such thing as perfect parent. Uh, so I think you know I guess as we go along, I think every child just needs a very different kind of approach. I mean, with your own children, actually, two kids with the same upbringing need to be dealt with very differently for the same situation. So there is no set one rule, I think, for parenting. I mean, if there was a logbook for parenting, then what would have been easier than that? So, but
True.
I think communication and keeping channels of communication open at all times, I think, is very key. I think it's very important to give them that that feeling that it's a safe haven. It's a place where they can always come back to no matter what, because all of us and kids nowadays, with the amount of the challenges are thrown at them, they are bound to be in difficult situations. So if they know that they can come back to you, if they need to for anything, I think that kind of really creates a safe bond between you all. And for that, I think it's that fine line of knowing, when do you be a parent and when do you be a friend. I think that is what needs to, evolve.
True. So, you are a determined woman who goes an extra mile to complete all your work with panache. So, what is the secret of you being an achiever in life? How do you balance work, home, being a mother? And what is your typical day like?
So I think, I believe that all turning points in life actually come at the periphery of the comfort zone. So you have to step out of your comfort zone at every point in life to be able to go that extra mile. um, I think that's the first thing, and I think just striving for excellence is what I think keeps me going. My late father-in-law used to always say that it is the little things in life that actually bring about excellence. So even if you're doing a very small thing, but if you do it to the best of your ability, I think that is what makes a big difference. I mean, very often, we all want to do very big things in life. We are always waiting for that one big opportunity to come. But actually, if you just look at it, if you don't really wait for that one big thing, but even little things in life, even the small things, if you do in a great way, I think you're already an achiever then. I don't think I have any set routine. Well, of course, there is work. I exercise in the mornings, then I typically would work in the day. Now that we're working from home, kids are at home, so I like to keep going back to them. We have lunch together. Um, and then I like to wind up so that my youngest is still in school, and I like to be around her once she's done with her day. So, pretty much that. And evenings is sometimes with friends or again with family. So it's a very boring kind of a routine in that sense. But yeah, just try to get in, family time, my me time, and of course work, which is, work come passion kind of a space.
Yes, of course. We all know that you balance so many things. And of course, sports is a major part of your life too, which is, as you say, your me time. So, what made you start the Aditya Birla Education Academy? What is your philosophy? And when it comes to education, how is it different from the other schools?
So, Aditya Birla World Academy actually is the name of school. So, actually, yeah, we started school about 11 years ago. And, we focus on holistic growth actually at school. We believe that emotional well-being of the child is very important, which goes far beyond academics. Because I think if the child is emotionally stable, everything else falls into place, be it academics, be it extracurriculars. And we lay a lot of emphasis on extracurriculars as well, whatever the child may want to do. So it could be sport, it could be performing arts, visual arts. There's a varied, even at school we offer a lot of things, and even otherwise as children, if they're participating at say state level or national level, or whatever they're participating in, we give them that leeway and that support from school to be able to follow their dreams. So in that sense, we're different because we believe in, giving them exposure beyond academics. And we lay a lot of emphasis on the emotional well-being of children. So very often we have kids, if they're going through some mental health concerns, we may give them an exemption from an exam. So even stuff like that, we go that extra mile to, to make sure that the kids are very happy.
So it's very inclusive way actually, and a holistic way.
Yeah, it's very inclusive, uh, in a larger sense of the word also, because we do keep in
Yes.
mind, you know,
Yes.
the emotional health of the child.
So what prompted you to start the Empower, and what made you take such keen interest in the field of mental health?
So again, along my journey, because we even started the Aditya Integrated School, which is a school for children with special needs, with different learning needs, and then one's own experiences in life, one realized that the taboo around mental health was so ingrained, was so high, and the stigma was so ingrained that one didn't know what to do if one was faced with the situation. I mean, there was just nothing. So there was total lack of awareness. Of course, clinical care, health practitioners, nothing. I mean, there was just nothing. And even if there was, one really didn't know what to do about it. So, I realized that there was this huge gap, a huge lacuna in this. And with my own personal experiences also, I think we really felt that there was a great need for something like a mental health, a campaign, a movement, and then to, of course, set up clinical care and, create more and more awareness and basically increase mental health literacy amongst the community and people at large.
Yeah, so basically there is always a stigma which is attached to the mental health,
Yeah.
and people are awkward even to talk about it. So there is a shame also attached to it for some people. So how do we break through these barriers and end the stigma once and for all?
So I don't think that you can really end the stigma once and for all, because it is like you're saying. I mean, it's, everyone is even just awkward talking about it in your own house. Very often, you don't want to even acknowledge that there could be an issue. So I think, we really need to just keep chipping away at the old block little by little, because that's the only way that the stigma is going to get alleviated. And so I think it starts with each one of us. I think each one of us needs to realize that it's not a personal failing to have a mental health issue, whether if you have it, or if say your child has it, or somebody else has it. It doesn't mean that it doesn't reflect badly on you as a person if you have a mental health concern, because so creating awareness about it is very, very important. And once that awareness is created, just talking more about it, because it just becomes commonplace. And little by little, I think, like even now, I mean, when we started 5 years back to where we are now, there's a huge difference. I mean, we've even managed to get mental health conversations onto center stage with, say, even national TV and national media talking about it. Which earlier, like in our first press conference when we were launching Empower, we had all of two journalists who attended it, because people were not interested, the journals were not interested. So, and it wasn't um, sort of meaty enough news for them to really capture it. So from there to here, we have come a long way. So I think we are on the right path. The trajectory is slow, but it's upward. And I'm very hopeful that it is going to take a couple of years to get it going, but at least we've started the whole.
Yes, absolutely. So
Path.
how does one know that she is suffering from any kind of mental health issues, and how do you diagnose these issues? Is there a red flag, or how's it?
So, all of us are on a spectrum. I mean, so even say, take something like, say, fatigue. We all have days where we get more exhausted than another day, or in the day, there are times when we are more tired than at another time. So, everybody's on a spectrum. But if you feel, I'm just taking a simple symptom like fatigue. If you feel that you're so tired that you just can't even, step out of your room, or you find waking up in the morning extremely difficult, and you find yourself in bed for days, then that's a red flag. So any kind of behavioral pattern that you see which is coming in the way of your daily living, and for extended period of time, like say a couple of weeks, for example, then that's a red flag. Um, so it could be even binge eating, it could be even procrastinating, it could be anything. So anything that comes in the way of your daily life then therefore becomes a red flag.
And what about phobias and anxieties?
So even that, I mean, again, we are all on a spectrum. We all have phobias. We all have fears. We all have anxieties. But if it starts coming in the way of your life, then it's a red
And
flag.
it's a red flag.
Say, for example, meeting people. Like, say, when we're meeting new people, or when we're going to, say, a big party, for example, you may feel a little, you feel a little awkward, or you hesitate a little bit, or you feel a little conscious. But it's not that you decide that you're just not going to go. You're able to deal with that anxiety, and you get on with it. But a person with, say, social anxiety, for example, will just not be able to do it. So she may get ready, he or she may get ready and all of that, be ready for it, go right up to the place of the party, but has so much social anxiety, can't face the crowd and just turns back, you know. So like that. So now that has come in the way of his daily functioning. And if you see that that's a pattern that is repeatedly happening, then
Yes.
it's a cause of concern.
When it's a problem. Yes.
Yeah.
And what is the impact of early interventions? Do you advise any best way to conduct an intervention, and how can family and friends come into play for help?
Early intervention is the best, actually. And the best thing to do is, when in doubt, I don't think there's any harm in seeking a therapist. I mean, at the most, a therapist is going to say there is no issue and it's just a routine, a regular anxiety, for example, or just a low mood, nothing to do about it. But if there is an issue and if there is early intervention, then the prognosis is that much better. So, then you're obviously able to deal with the situation better, you're able to deal with life better, and you're not getting into a slump where it becomes so debilitating that you just stop living.
True.
And friends and families, you know I think if we as friends, or as family members, try to lend a ear without really being judgmental. I think, very often what happens is somebody comes and tells us, I'm not feeling well. You may say that, isme kya hai? There's nothing in this, or it's going to become all right, or why do you have, what do you have to be anxious about? You've got everything going for you. So the minute you start become judgmental, I think people then just back off. So I think if we are able to just be there for people, for your friends, if you can just actually lend a helping hand, and just be there. Sometimes just being a non-judgmental listener really goes a long way. And then obviously, if you're able to, say, diagnose, or if you do spot a red flag, then I think if you can help that friend to actually pucker up the courage to go and see a therapist, to seek some professional advice, that would really be very, very helpful.
Yeah. So the scope of getting better is faster this way for sure. What about addictions, alcohol, drugs, social media? This is a major cause of concern. And how can this be tackled?
So again, I mean, if at home, if you are realizing as parents, if we realize that there are little odd patterns, for example, or we can say, I mean, as a parent, I think you do sense it. But what happens is that, very often we just pretend it's not there. We
True.
just, pretend that ye to nahi hai, it can't be like that. So we just kind of, our mind turns a blind eye. So it's there, but you don't want to acknowledge it. And I think that's the first thing that we all need to really face, that if there is an issue, let's deal with it, because it's not going to just go away by pushing under the carpet.
True.
Seeking, I mean, and if you feel you're not, if you don't have the wherewithal to handle that situation, then the best is to seek a therapist, to seek some professional help. It's always better to do that and err on the side of caution and err on the side of being early than being too late.
True. So it's really lovely that your foundation supports those who cannot afford to look after their own mental health. What more can the media do to support this? You've already mentioned a part of the media. And also, is there anything we can do which can make a difference?
I think, the role of the media is humongous, because the reach that the media has is quite unparalleled. So, and I think the more they talk about it, the more the use of correct words is very important. Like, even in this, say, case of, say, the death by suicide by Sushant Singh. I
Yes.
mean, the whole bit about him, firstly, committing suicide itself is a wrong way to put it, because committing suicide means you're committing a mistake. So so changing that parlance is very important. So even if and when he did die by suicide, the whole focus moved away from it, and that just became a very secondary thing. Everything went down to the whole drug issue. So here the media can be can be more responsible and lay more focus on, what could be the reasons for it, how can it be prevented, what is the kind of education that we can give to people who may be having suicidal ideation, or to their families? How do you deal with it better? So things like that, if the media can create that awareness and a responsible awareness, I think that will really go a really long way.
True. And anything which we can make a difference, how can we make a difference?
I think again, just talking about it, just creating that awareness, and amongst ourselves also, if we just are open about it and we talk about it, just the way you would talk about somebody getting a fracture, for example, or somebody having diabetes, if we just have more conversation about it, it just kind of eases people, and it makes it that much easier to seek help. See, ultimately, I mean, if you can deal with it yourself, great. But if you can't, then you need to seek help for it. So either way, if you feel confident enough and you can accept the issue, then you can deal with it. Because but till you don't even want to acknowledge that yes, there could be a problem, how is it going to get better?
True. So these days, children seek a perfect life when it comes to their relationships, their jobs, their aspirations, and they aren't willing to compromise, which is a good thing. But on the flip side, it also gives rise to very high expectations, and sometimes they are not able to cope with this disappointment. This is different from our generation. We took what we got and made the most of it. So, what advice would you have for the kids and the young adults of this generation when it comes to dealing with these issues? And what advice would you have for us as parents to deal with these issues?
So I completely agree with you that everybody wants it perfect. I think this whole debate, even about social media, the whole thing is that there's a whole world being created, the virtual world, and there's such a difference between the virtual world and the real world. The gap between the two is just so wide, and that is what creates this whole mess in their minds, because they're aspiring for a virtual world in which they're sort of projecting it to be perfect because they want that. But actually in reality it's not perfect, because there is no such thing as perfection, right? So the gap is just so much that it becomes very difficult for the children to then handle it.
True.
So I think aspiring for this perfection itself, I think, is flawed. So we need to step down a little bit from it. And I think as parents, we need to teach the children to be able to take a no in their stride. We've not given them that. Like when we were growing up, there was so often, I remember there was so many, it was so often, my parents used to say no for something. And we just took it in our stride. Even if it was just, say, spending that extra 1,000 rupees on a shirt. I remember my mom saying that, Abhi, what is the need? You've just bought it. So we learned to take no in our stride. But nowadays, we don't tell our children no. We don't teach them how to take no because we don't tell them no. So if we teach them that to take failure in their stride, if to take it's okay to get a no sometimes, it's okay not to get the food of your liking on a particular day. I think these things will probably help them also be more resilient in life and realize that everything doesn't have to be the way they want it. There are going to be blips in life.
I remember this, seeing our mother's eyes itself, we knew, like, yeah, whether we're supposed to do this or not do
Yeah,
this.
exactly.
Yeah. So, definitely, I think the children really need to tackle this feeling of disappointment which they
Yeah.
have.
I think we also as parents need to teach them that. We need to give them those chances, those times of saying no to
True,
them.
true, true. So, the pandemic has led many people develop severe mental health issues simply because of the way it has altered our lives, isolated us, and to financial losses too. So, what advice would you give them, and what advice would you give to those around them?
I think, I mean, like you're saying, it has really been very difficult. Even with our helpline, we saw a lot of obviously helpline, even people coming for clinical care, for treatment. We saw a lot of anxiety, lot of you know depressive episodes, and old depressive episodes also resurfacing. So a lot of domestic violence, relationship issues. So everyone has been going through that, and even with the children. A lot of helplessness and uncertainty. I mean, we could see it with with college and university, and even now we don't know what's really happening. So I think it's been there, but I think obviously it's going to pass. So we have to hold on to that. I think resilience is what we all need at this point in time. to adapt to the situation, and knowing that this will pass, it has to pass, it will pass, and going forward things will get streamlined. And in the meantime, what is the best that we can do out of the situation? So online education is a fine example of that. I mean, it's not the best case scenario, but we've all tried to make the best of it. So I guess that's what we need to do. We really need to see that silver lining, in the cloud. And I really believe that there is always, uh, there's always good in bad, and there's always bad in good. So let's see the good in this situation, and you know get the best out of it and move on.
Absolutely, you hit the nail. And at the Duchess Club, also, since the pandemic started in March, we have always been having all Zoom meetings and maybe 3 to 4 meetings a month. And like we feel still so connected. Like it doesn't seem as if we really missed meeting each other physically.
Right. Yeah.
So, so it is definitely important to confront and seek help also if required. So I had seen one of your shows with Mr. Amitabh Bachchan, and as Amitji says, suno, dekho, kaho. And suno, of course, is someone who can lend an ear to someone who needs it. And dekho is to look out for symptoms and illness. And kaho is to help somebody and spread the word and build awareness about mental health.
Hmm.
So that was a fabulous show of yours.
Thank you so much. That was a campaign that Empower had come up with, actually. It's still on. Suno Dekho Kaho. So we kind of, he very kindly, agreed to sort of come on board and lend his
Yes.
amazing support. He's just such a graceful person, and every time I meet him or I talk to him, it just leaves me even more inspired. He's just really one of those very, very fine people. It's just amazing that
And your Empower outreach programs have also really created a lot of awareness, and congratulations for that.
thank you so much.
Changing subjects a little now, I'm aware that you exercise very seriously and very passionately. You enjoy it, and you often called it your me time. Can you explain the importance of exercise and why it means so much to you? How do you manage during the lockdown too?
So I think even from the so one is the scientific side of it. I mean, we all know that exercise releases happy hormones called endorphins, and those are the hormones that make you feel happy. The chemicals that make you feel happy, that keep you motivated. So from that point of view also, it's very important. And anybody who exercises gets addicted to it, because you like that feeling that you get post an exercise, good cardio workout or good yoga or whatever that may be. So that is one side, one bit of it. So it obviously leaves you very happy, and we all know the health benefits of exercise. But I mean, physiological benefits we all know. Releasing endorphins is a very emotional, is a very mental kind of a benefit. So that's that. And of course, other, I mean, for me, exercise just is a real way to uh, kind of just be with myself also. Or I like to exercise with friends actually. So it's a good way to sort of spend time with friends also. And it just leaves me feeling very invigorated for the day. So the days I don't exercise, I'm really crabby. And very often, by the evening, my one of my kids will be asking me, "Have you not done your dose today? Have you not exercised? Why don't you go to the gym?" So it's that obvious. But I think once you start exercising, and all of us who are into it, I mean, you're into cycling so much. I think all of us who do that and have that, addiction to it really swears by it. So somebody who doesn't exercise, I feel very bad because they don't know what they're missing.
Absolutely. How did you manage during this pandemic, your exercise routines?
So I exercised at home actually. I in fact focused a lot on my yoga and my functional. So it was, and nowadays with the YouTube videos and all, there's just so much available online, that it sort of was very easy to continue with that routine. And once we were able to go out cycling, because then once the lockdown sort of lifted and it eased out, and there was times when we could go out cycling, we did that, and that was beautiful, because to see Bombay like that, with such less traffic, with zero pollution, we could never seen Bombay like that. So it almost seems surreal now. And I don't mean to sound this thing, but I miss that phase. I miss the time when Bombay looked so beautiful and so clean, and we could just go out cycling, and without a care about the traffic. So it was really nice. Yeah.
True, true. And what about your trekking? I know you're a very passionate trekker also.
Trekking is something that we've missed actually this last year. So hopefully this year, we hope to catch up and do a couple, so we don't feel that we've missed out on the last year's trips.
So, which has been your best trek?
The one we did to Manaslu was very beautiful. It was really beautiful. It was stunning. I think just being in nature, I think is just very nice. I think it really helps realign yourself. I think you're able to harmonize. I think the vibes, the vibrations that you get in nature, I think match with your own internal vibration, and therefore you're able to really realign yourself. So just being in nature itself is so healing. It's a spiritual experience by itself.
Yes. Now, just to the little fun part of our conversation, I would request you to complete these one words, one
Okay.
in one or two words.
Okay.
What is laughter for you?
Just giggling with friends,
What is love?
my children,
Children are.
my life,
Money is.
a commodity,
Fame is.
transient,
Fear most.
loneliness.
Naughtiest or fun thing you've ever done?
Not to be said here.
Okay. What's your favorite sport?
Favorite sport?
Yes. Cycling? Wow. You're a softer parent or Mr. Kumar Mangalam?
Well, I'm the softer and the harder, so whatever you may call it, but yeah,
Your stress buster?
my dogs.
Ah, yes, that's another part of you we didn't talk about. Yes. What's one sea change you would like to get?
In myself or generally?
Generally. I know you would prefer, you would like many, but anyone.
I think more compassion and for people to be less judgmental about others. I think people being judgmental really, really bothers me. So even though it's not about me, it's a trigger button for me actually. So I wish people would be less judgmental about others.
Something which is non negotiable for you.
Mm, simplicity.
Yes. And what's your biggest indulgence?
A piece of chocolate cake.
Chocolate cake. Okay. Thanks, Nija. Thank you so much for such an interesting conversation. And it's been great to be moderating a session with you. It's always been a dream, and I think it's been fulfilled today. We'll have some question answers from the audience.
Sure, sure. Should I see it on the chat?
Yeah, yeah, they'll be on.
Or are they going to be asking?
Yes. Can
Okay.
Savera Hotel switch on the camera, please? Just a sec. They have to
Yeah.
switch on the camera. Kiran, can you please switch on the camera?
You have to come here and ask the question.
Yes, the camera is on.
Um,
We can take the questions, Anu, from the audience.
Questions from the chat box first.
Yes, Anu, please go ahead.
No, the chat box question. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is one of them is being comfortable in social settings is evidence from mental health. What about sadhus who spend most of the time with themselves and believe that too much of focus on the outside is really counterproductive to spiritual well-being? Many monks actually believe that socializing is waste of energy and being alone is being in your own company.
So I think here we're talking at two different levels actually. So one is of course the spiritual path that you are in, because ultimately, yes, kind of withdrawing your senses and being within yourself is of course what one wants to do, because the more stimulation that you get from the outside, the more reactive you are, you become that much more volatile. So therefore, if you restrict your interactions and you start spending more time with yourself, but that comes from a space of spirituality. You need to know that why are you doing what you're doing. So if you're doing it because you want to focus on yourself and go within, but you're happy doing that, then that's fine. But if you are actually retrieving and sort of restricting it because that gives you anxiety and panic, then then it's a cause to worry. So you need to understand, and you are the best person to answer that question for yourself. Where is that feeling coming from? What is that? Where is the origin of that feeling? And then you'll be able to decide which way it is.
Sure. Another question is, how do you reach the villages and remote corners of our country to deal with mental issues there?
So we are trying to actually, go use the existing NGO networks in different parts. So, like, say, for example, whether it's Maharashtra, we've even worked with some people in Jharkhand. We're working with some people in MP, Bangalore. So, using the existing network of NGOs, I believe in our country is the best way to do it, because it's already set. Why reinvent the wheel? Because to any case, mental health is a very difficult topic to talk about. So to get people to really come on board becomes difficult. So if there is an existing network, if we kind of piggy bank onto them and then spread our word, is the way that we are trying to do it.
Because for them to understand also that it's a mental health issue is a
Very
thing,
difficult.
to explain it to them.
Because it's unseen, right? I mean, you can't see it, you can't measure it, there's no diagnostic test for it.
Correct.
So all these things make it that much more difficult.
True. Yes. Raji, you have a question?
Yeah. It was great listening to you, Neerja. Now, what I wanted to understand was, this is a common dilemma that several women go through. So, Birla is a name. And a name
Sorry, your voice is echoing, Raji.
Can't hear too clearly.
Yeah, the voice is echoing. Is it better now? Now?
Better.
Yeah, so there is Neerja and there is Birla. So how difficult or how easy was it finding Neerja with the Birla surname? Lovely question.
So, this is a great question actually. And honestly, nobody's asked me this. And I was just thinking, it's such a coincidence. I was just thinking about this yesterday in relation to my children. Very much the same thing. So, see, for myself, initially, of course, it was tough. There's no question about it. Because, like I said, the external circumstances are also tough. You've also been placed into a very difficult, not a difficult, a different kind of atmosphere. And like you said, the surname, you got to be able to carry that surname on your shoulders with elan. So not that I wasn't able to, but it was a little difficult initially to kind of marry the two, because sometimes you feel that, are you losing your own identity in that process? But I think we all go through the learning curve. By and by you start understanding what is important to you, what is it that you stand for.
Yeah, so what are those two learnings which you would like to share? No, those two learnings when you went through that curve in finding yourself, and also using the advantages of the surname.
So that's what I'm saying, that when you start doing things, when you start evolving as a person and you start doing things for yourself, is when you start realizing that these are the things that are important to yourself and you need to hold on to that. It's so it may be a very small thing, but if it is important to you, then you need to hold on to it, because then that is what is going to define you. So it is very easy to, in the whole thing of wanting to flow with the situation, you tend to let go of those things also. But holding on to that which is dear to you and being genuine to your own self is the important thing.
Thank you so much. Nice listening to you.
Ladies, are we having any more questions? Anybody would like to ask any more question?
Someone is coming from
Oh,
behind.
yeah, someone is coming.
Hello, ma'am. Good morning. My name is Neela. I just like to know what is your working model when it comes to mental health support?
Are you talking about the support groups?
Yes. See, there are lots of mental health issues that people go through. For example, right from having mom issues like mom wounds and societal abuses, sexual harassments. So when there's a whole spectrum of issues that are going on. I just was interested. I don't know if I missed it. I've already said this before because I came slightly late. What is the model and how do people get in touch with your institution and how does help go out from there?
So at the moment, of course, so we've got a couple of centers. So whether it's Bangalore, Bombay, we have some cells in some of the colleges. So that is offline, where you can, on the website there's a number which you can call, take an appointment, and sort of go and see the psychologist or the psychiatrist, depending on what your need is, and the person with whom you're going to take the appointment will be able to direct you to the psychiatrist and fix up a time. We also have an e-clinic model actually. So even if you're not able to go to any of these centers, it's the same process actually, where you can call up, take the appointment, they'll fix a time with the psychologist or the psychiatrist, and you can have a face-to-face session. You can have an online session, sorry, not face-to-face, and you can have an online session. So, if you like, I can forward the details to you, and you can take it.
We can share it at the club, Neeja, for everyone.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Any more questions, ladies? Yeah, please do.
It's nice to see all the members there.
I know, Sujata. I was so happy to meet everybody. Just come here and look at the
Hello, Neerja, can you hear me?
Yes.
I want general opinion on this. I generally feel so much is being made about parenting, good parenting, bad parenting. So we are one or two generations mixed together. We didn't turn out that badly. I don't think our mothers never knew anything about parenting and all, but they didn't bring us up. Do you think it's being overstressed now? It's the mother's parenting, the father's parenting, and are they poking too much into the child's life?
I couldn't quite hear the question very clearly. Can you?
Talking about parenting,
Yeah.
there's so many counseling, so much of counseling, so much of assessing the child, counseling the mother. But I'm saying up to at least my generation, we were all brought up and we turned out to be pretty decent. So, anything was wrong with parenting of those years? Are we overstressing on this parenting?
So I think, like I said earlier, I completely agree with you. We've turned out quite all right. I think what it is that now we have become a little bit more, very fussy about a lot of the things that we are doing. We as parents also want our children to be perfect. We want them to be perfect in their studies. We want them to be perfect in whichever hobby they're doing. We want them to be super achievers. We want them to be the perfect child who is excelling in everything. We also want them to be perfect listeners. We want that they should exactly listen to us the way we want them to be. So I think we need to sort of step back a little bit and understand that every kid is different, every child is different. Everybody can't be good at everything. There are certain things that some children will be good at. So why not focus on that? And let's cut some slack out for them also. I mean, why are we trying to create perfect children and therefore make it so difficult for them? In fact, there's a very nice poem, and I've kept it aside because I thought I'd read it. I'm just going to read 2 lines of it, and if you're like, you can always go back and hear it or read it. It's by Khalil Gibran, and it's something that I really like. And it starts with, your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. So this is the startings of that poem. It's a very beautiful poem. Do have a read at it. It's by Khalil Gibran. And I think it's so beautiful because, I mean, if we treat ourselves like potters, we're the nurturers here. We're just there to, mold them to the best possible. So we're like potters. So just why not just shape them? We can't be their creators. We are wanting to, take over them. It can't happen. We have to step back a little bit. We have to give them that space. We're there to nurture them and to give them the best environment, but doesn't mean that they belong to us.
Very true, Nirja. I think this particular poem of Khalil Gibran brings tears to my eyes even today when I read it. I mean, he's a wonderful, wonderful writer. Yeah, we have another member here who would like to ask a question.
Thank you, Nirja. You're very inspiring. I just have one question to you is, we're talking about mental health issues of our offspring and all of that. But what is that one thing that you have to say to the parent, either parent or both, when their children are first diagnosed with any issue? The first reaction in my experience has been, why me? But how do you change that why me to why not me?
So I would say that, instead of going into all that, let's take the focus away from ourselves. The minute you're asking why me or why not me, means you're getting the focus back onto yourself. But let's understand that here is your child who is suffering so much. Why not focus on how to get the child to feel better rather than your own emotions? And that's the biggest role of a caretaker or a caregiver, right? Where you have to focus on your child, not on yourself. The minute you're a caregiver and you take that position, you back off from your own emotions and your own feelings, and you start focusing on finding solutions and ways and means of how do you get your child to feel better. I mean, the child herself or himself is already going through such a bad patch. So let's focus on that and get that out of the way rather than focusing on yourself and why me and, making yourself a victim. And, you know, I mean, why go into that direction only? I mean, I would think that let's try and focus on the child and not on our emotions.
Thank you.
Automatically, you're not going to think about why me because your focus is on how do I get my child better.
Thank you.
And then scientifically, if you want to look at it, I mean, if you go to then rationalize it also to yourself, I think the way then to look at it is that, which is what I was saying, that it's not it's not a personal failing. There's nothing wrong with your upbringing. I mean, you as a parent are doing your best. Why would you not do your best? You're not going to do anything that's going to harm your child. So you are doing your best, but circumstances sometimes happen like that. There is a whole role that genetics also plays in a mental illness. So if it's a combination of genes and environment, the child is having to go through it. And ultimately, I also believe that, all of us are here with all of us have our own journeys in life. So, I mean, if the child has to go through that from a karmic point of view, if you believe in the theory of karma, then that also is a part of your journey and his journey.
True.
I think the combination of emotional, spiritual, scientific, I think you just put everything together and get your answers. I don't think there is any, I believe that there is no one set answer for anything in life. Really, I mean, you can't only look at science for answers, or you can't only look at spirituality for answers. You have to kind of keep getting all your experiences to the fore and getting your work, getting your mind sorted.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a lovely answer, Nirja.
Thank you, Nirja. I think you really have been the perfect choice for this morning, and I think you've won all our hearts here, right?
Thank you so much. That's so sweet.
With your simplicity, your humility, and of course, you've inspired so many of us this morning. So I would like to thank Sujata for getting beautiful Nirja for the activity. Thank you so much, moderator.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. It's been really wonderful. Really enjoyed my session. Really enjoyed chatting with all of you.
It was wonderful, Nirja. Thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts.
We are so happy to have an inspiring personality like you to start the year with. I mean, your simplicity actually, I'm sure, permeates into your work too. So thank you so much. And yes, there's a few things I think that I would like to also share with you. Sometime back, I too went through something with my child, and I realized that they are actually reflections of you. You know, they are the ones because they carry your genes, they carry your habits, they carry your traits, and when it comes back to you, you see that you got to correct yourself. I felt that quite often, you know, when I was going through my journey. So it's been beautiful, and thank you so much.
Thank you. And things are better and more settled. You know, all of us go through bits and pieces in life, and I guess that's
Exactly. And I honestly feel that the millennials are the thinking generation. I think we just did what Ma said and what Dad said, but they really make you think, you know. So I really, yeah, I look at that, you know, I look at it from that point of view. Thank you so much. And Sujata, your questions was wonderful, interesting, and your cheerful smile just kept all of us, I mean, like so engaging. I can't tell you. Thank you once again.
Anu, can we have Rati, Anu, and Neena here?
Yeah,
Close to you.
Please come, yeah.
Neena, Anu, and Rati, could you please
And
come?
thank you to all our dear members who are coming in today. So wonderful to meet all of you.
Neja, this is Neja.
Yeah.
Anu Agarwal cannot be seen. Come forward.
Yeah, I think I'm too much in front. Let me go at the back. Yeah, Rati, you come in front. Yeah.
Neja, this is the five of us. Neena, Rati, Anu, and Anu. So we started the club and we are the five friends.
how nice to meet all of you.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to call upon
Thank you, Neja. Thank you so much, Neja. We just have something else which is happening. If you want to please listen to it, please stay on.
Okay, or
Or also, it's fine, Neja. It's absolutely fine.
Anija, we would love to see you in Chennai in person. Please.
yes, surely once whenever you all invite me, when you all have opened up, we will. I'll come by definitely.
It'll be a pleasure, definitely a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neja. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.